This is a quick guided tour of my product backlog file that I've used in the past. So now it's the ITS product backlog and future enhancement priorities. I've modified it for use at Gardner Denver. Although this is typically an Agile/Scrum project management tool, I think it would work well for us here to track ITS issues. I'll walk you through it. What I want to know is two things. One, are there any further customizations that you think it needs? And two, do you see any reason to not use this here? So the backlog is a way to collect, describe, estimate, rank, and track various product issues. It uses input from various people. Starting in column A, we select the issue type. It's over here. We can drop these down, and you can see when I highlight, when I click on the cell, it'll show the different types that you can actually choose from. And here they actually are in the drop down, so I can choose any of these that I want to. Over in column B is the JIRA issue number. eLogic uses JIRA as their issue tracking system, which is a very commonly used tracking system, and I've used it in the past. I used it extensively at Land's End. Patrick at eLogic is going to give me access to their JIRA system, so we can collaborate that way. I can get into their system and we can work back and forth. Column C, this is a high-level description of the business need. Ideally, this would be written in the form of an Agile or Scrum user story, as I show in the last 4 items. The first item is a more traditional business user request. What I also like to do is highlight certain words in red, make these keywords so that they're easier to find. Then over in column D, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a link, and this could be linking to a SharePoint site, a web page, a specific web page, a network folder, or whatever. Columns E through H, these are impacts and or dependencies. So what this is saying is that this item here would have an impact on SAP, or it would have an impact on GD Inside, or this item here would have a dependency on work that has to be done in SAP, or maybe it has a dependency on work that has to be done somewhere else, and it impacts work downstream. So what you want to do here is think upstream versus downstream data flows or workflows. Column L over here, pretty self-explanatory. It's who the requester actually is. And of course the data request also pretty self-explanatory. Columns N through X. This is a scoring system for each item. The backlog is a living document that typically grows over time. It needs to be groomed on a regular basis. The scoring system is the primary means of doing that. These columns are for the business to provide subjective opinions. These opinions can be a group consensus, and in my past life they typically are a large group of people getting together every couple of weeks and evaluating and putting values to each of these options. Each answer results in points being added or subtracted from the priority score. Ideally, the highest priority score would help the business determine which work to pursue next. So this is fairly subjective, and it's only intended to help the business actually do actual ranks, which comes in the subsequent columns. But if you want to see what's actually in here and how this actually works, for example, we could do this one right here, startup claim. This is Dave Wadsworth's recent request, and so if it's whether it's Dave or a couple of people or a bunch of people, you would go in here and say, okay, this is probably a medium. You notice that the point total just incremented here. Does it impact other systems? I don't know. We'll just say yes, just for the sake of example. Does it increase revenue? I don't know. Probably not, but we'll say. And you see, because it was no increase, the score did not increase. OPEX increase or decrease? It probably decreases OPEX, which is going to increase its score. And then the customer experience impact, again, probably, well, let's call it a medium, because it helps them. Okay, so now it's a priority score of 6. So once you have a whole sheet full of these things and full of scores, then you can rank these things and see how they compare to each other. Now, moving over, columns Z through AD are additional columns, or additional means to help prioritize work. How useful these are depends on how many user stories or requests exist. If there are many departments or business units using this and creating a lot of requests, these columns can be really helpful to these groups. In my past life, I had a bi-weekly meeting with stakeholders from all departments to do this prioritizing exercise. So this column over here is an input into this ranking exercise. Now, starting in column AE over here, the columns with the red headers are strictly for IT and product manager use. Column AE is an estimate of hours or points, if you're using Agile Scrum methodology, needed to complete the functionality. One question for you is, do you think the planned expense column is needed? In the past, that's not been part of the product backlog and typically is not, but it might make sense for us here. Sprint name, which is column AH, is a remnant from Agile that I have just left in there. I don't know that we would use it here since we don't use Agile at Gardner Denver. The next column, or the last 3 columns, are just showing when the work begins and ends. And I could probably remove the word sprint from them, but this would show anybody who gets into this file when the work actually begins, when it is planned to end, and when the planned deployment date or transport date actually is. The very last column is you put almost anything in here just for notes. So that's it. Let me know what you think, and if you think that this is something that would work for us.